Well, Nobody Saves the World is a new action RPG, and it feels really similar to old school top-down Legend of Zelda games from days gone by, and the game has layers of satisfying progression. You know, it's early in 2022, but this is a game to get excited about, with the combination of satisfying combat, a whole host of characters to embody, to take down the corruption, and of course, save the world. Well, this is a new game from Drinkbox Studios, creators of the Guacamelee series and other fantastic games. So if you play games from Drinkbox Studios, you'll be familiar with their animation and their humour, and Nobody Saves the World has all that and much, much more. So whereas Guacamelee was their take on the Metroidvania genre, Nobody Saves the World is much more of the top-down action RPG, and once again they've demonstrated their understanding of tight controls and very, very satisfying game mechanics. So this game dishes out the dopamine hits at a serious pace, and just when you think it's time to take a break, you're pulled right back in. We start out the game as Nobody, and this is a stickman style character, thin, removed of any remarkable features, looking like a very thin ghost. So the previous hero, a mighty mage, has gone missing, and then you take up the mantle to save the lands. So Nobody has a shape-shifting ability thanks to a nifty magic wand found in the cell that you find yourself in. Well, it's not too long before you start to progress and uncover the brilliance of Nobody Saves the World by transforming yourself into a rat. So by becoming smaller, you can fit through tight gaps and therefore reach new parts of the map. So the rat also has the ability to inflict dark damage onto opponents, which is another smart feature Drinkbox has implemented. So as well as the shape-shifting abilities, you also have elemental attacks. So you've got light or dark, sharp or blunt, meaning switching back and forward between characters at pace is the way to take on heavily guarded rooms. But that comes in time when you start out slow, learning to level up with your rat and escape your cell. So once you make it out of your short tutorial zone, then you quickly open up new forms, including the guard and the ranger. So the guard swings a sword to good effect, and the ranger has a bow and arrow for good ranged attacks. And each character has a different weapon and damage type, plus an attacking style. So for example, the rat is small, but his bites sting for sure, and the guard's sword attacks are great for dealing with crowds, and the ranger is great at a distance. It's not long before you open up more characters, including the bodybuilder, the egg, yes, that's right, an egg. You got the dragon, the mermaid, and the lovable horse, who is susceptible to falling in love. So the horse is particularly entertaining as he moves fast and his attacks really pack a punch, so given it's a horse and he uses a back kick. Although you do find yourself having to move backwards into combat, which can be quite cumbersome, although also is quite funny. Nobody Saves the World is very focused on combat, and much like many of the other features in the game, this is very, very satisfying. So there's plenty of enemies and different types trying to get you. So you've got your smaller horde enemies who try to overwhelm you, so enemies attacking at range, and also wizard cats sending in scratching spells. You know, the combat is simple to pick up and understand, and many enemies can be beaten with standard weapon attacks, but some are protected by an element, meaning you have to hit them with the right element to open up the damage, otherwise they're going to be immune. This teaches the player to switch between forms quickly, so my natural instinct here was to stick with one player type, and I found myself gravitating towards the guard, but you quickly learn you need a variety of elements to progress, and you do have more fun learning about other characters and their different styles. And if I didn't have this motivation to switch things up, I probably wouldn't have tried out all the characters. So combos are an important factor in combat too, and that means you have to strike an enemy with an element a few times to build up an elemental meter, and then unleash a swift attack to maximum efficiency. Now the combat is pretty deep the further you go into the game, and all that just adds another layer of enjoyment. You know, complementing the combat is a rewarding leveling up system, or systems that are working really well together. So as soon as you unlock a character, you have a quest, and that might be a fairly simple objective, like use bite to kill 10 enemies, for example if you're the rat, and on completing these quests you get 3 more quests, also a reward, that goes into your bank and it's used later to open up doors when you've got enough in your bank. So quests, they're nice and varied and plentiful, plus the progression is always on screen, giving you motivation and something to do. So given you've got multiple characters, then you'll have multiple branching quests too, making sure you're always going to be busy. You may have to run through a dungeon a couple of times to complete objectives, but given the combat and exploration is fun, it's not really a problem. Well, we've got quests that give us items to help us progress and unlock the road ahead, but each character also has a rating. So each character starts off as an F, and you go up like E, D, C, B, A, up to the S tier rating for each character. And also when we first start out, we only have a single move, but that opens up as we play, and we get more moves that can be assigned to 3 action buttons. So eventually you get the option to unlock and swap abilities between characters, meaning you can craft a good build with a single character or a set of characters that you like. So it is a really neat system. It looks simple on the surface to the player, but underneath it must be super complex. So congrats to the team at Drinkbox for the onboarding process in the game and how they teach us to play. Because in the first few hours of the game I didn't really feel overwhelmed, wasn't really confused or how to control my party of players. Now once you get it down, you're going to be switching up characters quickly, dishing out the various damage types and having tens of enemies at your mercy. So there are dungeons and castles in the game too, which are procedurally generated, meaning you're not going to get that same experience twice. So as well as the layout of the dungeons, the enemies are switched up as well, and that offers some nice variety and replayability. So dungeons are fun, although they can get quite tricky quite quickly, as you do tend to get overrun with enemies and mobbed in the early game when you haven't got these skills or the abilities that you have later. So dungeons reminded me of Diablo or Lost Ark, so you enter an arena, you kill a bunch of enemies and move on to the next one and do the same again, and then you've got a big boss at the end. So you've got an occasional puzzle along the way, but the main focus is really on the combat. Between the dungeons, you've got a rich overworld filled with forests and towns, and a supporting cast of weird and wonderful characters. So you've got the horse to fall in love with, then you've got the slug who's lost his wife, and also the randy shop maiden who looks a little bit like a lizard, so she's quite scary. But it all has Drinkbox's personality written all over it. You've got the slick animation combined with the humour, and it only adds to the rich world that we inhabit. So Nobody Saves the World, it's been a big surprise to me. Yeah, it's really good, and it's so early on in 2022 as well. We shouldn't be surprised that Drinkbox comes out with a banger of a title that feels polished, plus could compete with the best of them in the action RPG genre. Drinkbox has proved once again that they understand progression mechanics and understand how to dish out the entertainment. You know, the game looks great, it's smooth, the combat is fun, and the progression is really exciting. Well, it's only available on PC and Xbox at the moment, but it's well worth seeking out, especially if you're a fan of top-down RPGs. So this one is an early gem of 2022, and it's definitely one I'd like to recommend. So it's developed and published by Drinkbox Studios, it's available for Xbox and PC, and I played it on PC Game Pass, and the release date was the 18th of January 2021. Well, that is it for my review of Nobody Saves the World, an absolutely fantastic game that you can sink loads and loads of hours in, and it's another great example of the talent at Drinkbox Studios. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to This Week in Video Games. Or you can follow me on Twitter at TWIVG Podcast. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out the other videos on the channel. Well, thanks again, and I'll see you soon.